following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, Ralph Tyko, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of the greatest state in the Union. That or New York, one or the other. You know, could be Nevada, too, because my guest is from Nevada. Not from Nevada, but living there now. I'd like to welcome back to these airwaves Jeff Kallman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, and this pays a lot less in taxes than New York and California do, and is a lot less pain in the neck to drive around than New York and California.
No question about that. And I was going to ask you about the adjustment that you made to Nevada. Are you happy there? I mean, taxes notwithstanding, your situation notwithstanding, is there a community of folks that are into music, into sports?
I've met a lot of people here who are into either or both. I've lived here since 2007, and I've been happy here.
Oh, I didn't know it was that long. I thought it was more of a recent thing.
No, I came here in 2007, and except unless you count that in the summertime, Nevada holds the heat very well. It's a great place to live, and I'm very comfortable and happy here.
Good. I'm glad. And
the only things I really miss in Nevada are the ocean and Major League Baseball. Again, minor league baseball, which is the next best thing.
Are there any rumors of the A's getting? It could be the best thing, minor league ball. By the way, I love minor league baseball. But are there rumors at all? Because the A's seem to be having a hell of a hard time putting a ballpark actually in place. And
well, I know where they want to put one, and from what I have seen of it, it's a smart location to do it. The question is whether they'll be able to do that. Meanwhile, you may want to know that Las Vegas has the A's AAA team now.
That's what I mean, and they also own, by so doing, they own territorial rights. And I'm thinking
they won't bring Major League Baseball to Las Vegas for one good reason. There's not enough market for live Major League Baseball in Vegas. For minor league ball, definitely. Major League ball, no.
Okay, that tells me something.
That could change in 10 years, but right now, no.
The area that you probably like on the waterfront for the A's proposed ballpark is very problematic for a number of reasons.
That's what I've heard. You give it a quick glance, it looks sensible, but I know they're having issues, mostly from what I've read, access issues.
Right,
absolutely. And where to go parking. So, if I remember seeing a site map correctly, the new location would not be so far away from the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum that they couldn't knock that eyesore down and build parking there.
That's another location that would probably be best, given there are no ecological problems like there would be with it on the waterfront.
Tell me this: why did the A's
public
location?
Transportation is in place. The parking lot is there. They could indeed tear the one structure down, build the other in the parking lot, and make a parking lot out of what they tore down. And
what I don't understand yet is why the A's location would have ecological problems if the Giants didn't have building what's now AT&T Park. Because that park is next to the water too.
Well, they had to go through a whole bunch of stuff, as anybody does. How much of a break they got is one thing. but down by the water. In other words, the A's in the location that they're at would not have any new ecological problems in building a new park.
Well, they have one right away. It's called the Coliseum.
Yes, but they'd be tearing it down.
Well, if they could tear the Coliseum down, that would go a long way. But the question I gather is, why does Oakland insist on keeping the old bucket alive?
Why
meaning the city, meaning the city, not the team.
Okay.
The safest bet in the world might be the A's would love to get out of that.
First of all,
yard.
Everything goes through not only the city, but the county of Alameda. So you have two decision makers as
double your displeasure.
Double your displeasure, exactly. And the powers that be in Oakland and Alameda County haven't been kind to professional sports franchises in the past. As you know, the Raiders come and go.
But that's got nothing to do with the A's.
In San Francisco next year. So life isn't easy in the East Bay, but let me tell you something. You talk about weather. Northern California has changing climates. You can be in San Francisco and be at 50 degrees.
Oh, I remember Northern California well. I lived and worked there for a few years.
Yeah, it's
back in the 90s.
Oakland and Alameda, where I am, that little island off of Alameda, has per day of the year the best temperature. It averages 70 over the year.
Oh yeah.
It rarely gets too hot, rarely gets too cold. It's fantastic from that standpoint. And I always like to upplay the community I live in when I talk to a baseball guy like yourself. Washington Park in Alameda was the home of an awful lot of semi-pro, American Legion stars that have come up through the years in the Bay Area. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick little story about Alameda, and then I'm going to let you take over today because you got a lot to talk about. On Pearl Harbor Day in 1943, they're playing a semi-pro game or an American Legion game. That day were three Yankees. Bobby Brown was one. Charlie Silvera was another one. And I can't think of the third guy right off the top of my head, but they were, when Pearl Harbor was announced, they were playing a baseball game here in Alameda that morning, on a Sunday morning. So, little Alameda trivia for you. And with that, I want to talk about what you find interesting in today's baseball. What's going on today?
I have a wonderful way to start. How about an Astros pitcher pitching his third career no-hitter, putting him in very elite company because only four others have pitched three or more, namely Larry Corcoran, Cy Young, Bob Feller, Sandy Koufax, and Nolan Ryan. Justin Verlander threw a no-hitter at the Blue Jays today for the Astros. 2-0 was the final.
I watched the final few outs on television this morning, and this morning here, pretty much afternoon, wherever you are. But,
yes. Now, here's another one for you. If you can think of any pitcher who's thrown a no-hitter in his next start following a game in which he was ejected, I don't have any record of it, and I can't find one. Not to mention, Verlander now becomes another trivia question. Name the only man in baseball history ever to throw a no-hitter at a team whose first three hitters in the lineup included two sons of Hall of Famers.
Wow.
The first three Blue Jays in the lineup were, well, yes, the first three Jays hitters in the lineup were Bo Bichette and Craig Biggio, the son of Hall of Famer Craig Biggio, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Wow.
And except for Biggio drawing the only walk, I'm sorry, his name is Cavan Biggio, my mistake. And he was the only Jays base runner when he drew a walk.
Okay, for a long time, and Griffey Jr. was the one that really broke the mold, that I don't think there were many ball players that could duplicate their father's abilities.
Well, Griffey Jr. broke the mold, and then Barry Bonds broke the mold. In fact, Barry Bonds, it was the case of the son and the father. Likewise with Griffey Jr., other Hall of Famers have had children or grandchildren in the game. The jury is very much still out, for example, on Mike Yastrzemski, though he's looking good with the Giants.
I was just going to say, the giant outfielder who has come on with a bang. He's a grandson of Yaz.
Carl Yastrzemski.
Yeah.
I did say grandson. Dale Berra made the majors for several seasons as a third baseman, but nowhere in his father's league as a ball player.
There were the Sisler brothers, Dick and George Sisler.
Dick and Dave. Dick and Dave. Their father was George, and neither of them were quite at the level of their father, though Dave Sisler was a major league manager for a period. No, Dick Sisler, I'm sorry. Dick Sisler's moment in the sun as a player was hitting what proved to be the pennant-winning home run for the Phillies in 1950.
Absolutely.
That's his other claim to fame. And you can run up and down the rolls and see all manner of Hall of Fame fathers whose children played the game but didn't quite do remotely as well as the fathers did.
Now, my point is, we have, including Yastrzemski and the three that you talked about, there's also kid pitcher on the Giants named Rodriguez, who is Pudge Rodriguez's son. And there are a number of other ball players, either coming up or already up, sons of major leaguers. Are we ready to break that mold where we have really successful ball players coming up who are with that DNA going?
We may. The jury is really still out on players like Mike Yastrzemski, Vlad Jr., Cavan Biggio, and Bo Bichette. Though Bo Bichette, of the group that we've just been talking about, seems to be doing the most damage for the Blue Jays.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, we'd have to wait.
Been a disappointment.
I don't know if I would call him a disappointment. I think when all was said and done, he was certainly ready for major league play even last year. But I suspect too that maybe a lot of the notice and the hype around him might have gotten away a little bit. So that's not enough. Any means. I would say with these players and the others, give them another couple of years in the major leagues, and then we'll see which way they're really going to shake out. I don't know if you can tell anything just by a rookie season, especially when you're talking about players whose fathers played in the major leagues.
Hey, I have to add another one to that, the Alomars. Sandy Alomar.
You've got a Hall of Fame second baseman. You have a pitcher who might have been a Hall of Famer. He had the talent, except he also got hurt a lot. And their father was a great utility player.
Right, absolutely, and a great coach. You know,
an excellent coach.
Not enough.
So we know what the verdict is. Yeah, and we know what the verdict is on Roberto Alomar, Hall of Fame second baseman. It's not yet a proper time to render anything as to what the careers of Bo Bichette, Kevon Biggio, and Vlad Guerrero Jr. are going to shake out to be.
Okay. Who are you impressed by of those guys?
I'm impressed by Biggio's glove work so far. He's quite as good as his father, potentially, with the leather at second base. I'm impressed by Bo Bichette's hitting. I'm impressed by Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s equilibrium. Even as he has struggled a few times this year, he doesn't seem to let it get to him that much. And I think he knows in his heart that this year may be where he makes his bones, but once he gets the final taste of it, he knows coming in next year, he's a major leaguer. All he has to do is stay inside of himself. That's just right now from where I sit. Like I said, really 3 seasons is going to be a lot better vantage point by which to observe these three and others. Mike Yastrzemski, the same thing. He's very impressive when he's on. I think he's still extremely young. I mean, not every rookie is going to be a Pete Alonso. So take these players on their own terms, within their own play, within their own thinking, within their own, and in 3 years, let's see where they stand.
Right, let alone next year, which traditionally was referred to as the sophomore jinx. And
except that not every player underwent the jinx, and not every player does. So that's why I give a 3-year window.
Right. Good point. Give it 3. What
impressed me the most about Verlander's no-hitter was that he's 36 years old. He hasn't got the bullet train fastball anymore. In fact, his fastball barely reached 90 today. But he was doing it with fastball location and a big snap on his curveball and kept off balance with that. This was a thinking no-hitter. This wasn't just, here it is, try it.
Right.
Verlander is a brain pitcher now.
He's one of those guys like Tanana, who started out throwing heat and only heat and learned to pitch. And in order to stay in the game, you got to do that because your skills change, not for the better.
Well, there's a big difference between Justin Verlander and Frank Tanana. Yeah, Frank Tanana brought heat. The reason he had to go the other way is because he got hurt. Verlander has been remarkably durable in his career. Also, he's got 10 times the talent, and his record shows it. Tanana remade himself into a serviceable junk ball.
He's adjusted to his stuff not being what it was.
He's also done something that either wasn't thought of or wasn't available to Frank Tanana in his time. Verlander, from almost the moment he became an Astro, signed on to the Astros' emphasis on marrying analytics to the raw talent and the raw person. Verlander wanted to know how the Astros analyzed what he did, where they saw his best spots being, where they saw his lesser spots being, and he adjusted accordingly. He was extremely receptive to that. And that's probably the biggest reason why he is able to extend his career to the age that he is now. He was never dumb, Verlander. Even when he was a pure power pitcher, Verlander was as smart as you ever saw on the mound. But taking the Astros and discovering that they were scouting him a couple of years and had built this entire dossier on what he did, how he did it, where he did it, and sometimes even why, and showing it to him in raw charts and raw data, it took with him. And he used that to adjust himself as a pitcher. And he has stayed at the top of the line for it. Plus, like I said, he's been amazingly durable. I don't remember him having very many injury issues. Maybe a little nagger here and there.
I forgot. Is this his third or fourth no-hitter?
His third.
His third. Okay.
It's his third. He is now one of only. Yeah, he's now one of only 6 who've pitched 3 or more.
And we're talking.
And two of them were dead ballers.
Right.
And that makes things interesting because he doesn't have the big speed on his fastball anymore. Justin Verlander, by today's standard, could be considered a dead baller. He had a fastball that didn't get near 90. He relied on his curveball a lot, which is probably how men like Cy Young and Larry Corcoran, each of who threw 3 no-hitters in the dead ball era, approached the game too. Also, the other difference is, of course, is that in the dead ball era, you weren't oriented to trying to blow people away. You were told to pitch to their contact, and if they happened to miss, oh well. But that's how it was done in the dead ball era.
Right.
Now, obviously, Verlander is trying to miss bats, and he's got 14 strikeouts today to prove it, but he wasn't pitching with power.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, I want to continue on the vein of what you want to talk about, but I'm going to interrupt you for my own benefit as a Mets fan. I want to know what you're thinking on this yo-yo trip that we're on with the Mets. What's going on?
Well, aside from the bats going to bed at the wrong possible time after they swept the Indians, those 6 games against the Braves and the Cubs may yet prove to have been their seasonal fate. Because look what you were up against. With those 2 teams, you were up against bullpens that had big question marks, who could have been taken, who should have been taken, and the Mets hitters were just not doing it when they got into those bullpens.
Right.
And now they picked themselves up against the Phillies yesterday, and I believe, I've got to look at the scores, but I think they were doing well against the Phillies today. I was out for a while, but
no, the game doesn't start till 4:00.
Oh, all right. So they haven't played yet. Well, they did. Well, they beat the Phillies yesterday, but that was after
and the day before
getting swept. Yeah, but they got swept by the Cubs when they shouldn't have been swept by the Cubs. They should have at least won one of those games.
Right. Oh, no question about that.
And if you
Robbie
consider that the
Cano
Braves bullpen looks better, the Braves bullpen looks better looks better on paper than they actually are. The Mets should have taken at least 1 and maybe 2 of those games. I think a couple of those games they had the games won, and then blew them, and then they started with what, a 10-0. Oh no, I was back in Atlanta the week earlier, a 10-3 lead, and they almost blew that game. They were not playing smart. I think they were going up there looking to try to do too much at the plate after a while. I mean, remember, they broke out of the All-Star break, and the next thing anybody knew, they had the best record in baseball after the All-Star break. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know if they woke up one fine morning and realized, hey, we're the best team in baseball right now after the All-Star break, and then just hit a wall. But what's going to happen is this Phillies series this weekend is going to be the beginning of their make or break. They've got maybe one of the 2 toughest schedules left in the season to play, and a lot of other contenders don't have schedules that treacherous. So this weekend plus maybe the week and a half, it's make or break for the Mets, I think.
Okay.
Once and for all, we find out what they're really made of, if they were built to go into the postseason this year, or is this really going to be warming up, and next year is going to be a year for them in the postseason? We'll figure that out mostly in the next week and a half. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, has J.D. Davis caught your eye at all?
He has. He's
a pretty good ball player, am I right?
Well, here's the funny thing. For most of the season, you've had a lot of Mets playing out of their natural positions. But some of them who are making adjustments. I think J.D. Davis is the most obvious one. For a guy who's a natural infielder, this guy is getting a lot of ground covered in left field. He's made some staggering plays in left field the last couple of weeks.
And he's got a gun.
He's got a good arm. And I watched him as he went along in left field, he's gotten a lot better at reading balls and reading the infield situations and responding accordingly. He's not perfect, but he's a lot better at it than you would have expected a natural infielder to be if you put him in the outfield for whatever reason. And with the Mets, a lot of it was circumstantial. But Davis is making himself enough of an outfielder that it's entirely feasible that come spring training, the Mets may think about keeping him as a left fielder.
Yeah, no question. And
because they can't afford not to have him in the lineup any more than they can afford to live with Enzo or Jeff McNeil. But the show he's been putting on as he's gone along.
Question either. Fraser might be gone.
That I believe is his natural position, but I don't see the Mets going forward after this year with Todd Frazier.
No, that's what I say. He could be the guy at third. Could be McNeil.
He could.
What I like about these guys is their versatility.
I like McNeil better as a second baseman.
But you got.
I like McNeil.
Locked into a long-term contract.
If there's one thing I've learned in all these years observing baseball and deals like that is that where there's a will and a brain applied, there are ways to get around that. And it's entirely possible that the Mets could, if they wanted to, find a taker for Cano next year. Because there's no question, Brodie Van Wagenen made a drastic tactical mistake last winter. If he wanted Edwin Diaz that badly, he could have gotten him even without having to take Cano. A smart general manager will look for the ways and the other things that a team is looking for and make that deal. But that was Van Wagenen's inexperience talking.
Right. He thought he had to do that to get Davis.
Yeah.
And we both might be thinking, had Davis had a better year, we both might be thinking, give some, get some. This isn't bad. Davis, as a matter of fact, has looked good lately.
Yeah. Well, and this is a guy the Astros gave up on.
Right.
So Davis, I think, has made himself a Mets fixture. Whether it's going to keep him in left field, and the way he's been playing left field this second half, like I said, it wouldn't shock me to see the Mets thinking about keeping him there.
Jeff,
or if Todd Freeman
talking about Cano, I meant to say Diaz, the relief pitcher. In other words,
Diaz's problem is simple. At the beginning of the year, he was misused, misplaced and misused, and I'm willing to bet the house that it shot his confidence to pieces. They couldn't seem to make up their mind what to do with him.
It might have been some floating bone spurs that.
Yes, I saw that, and that's probably a factor too. But at the beginning, in the first month and a half of the season, you may remember that they couldn't really settle in on working him in the highest leverage situations. They just gave him a closing assignment. Then they decided, well, we're gonna try him when we really need it the most. Then we're not. Then we are. Now you see it. Now you don't. Up and down. And then when he struggled a little bit, and possibly the bone spurs had a factor in that, by that time, with everything else that was going on around the Mets, it wouldn't shock you to find out that his was shot confidence.
Jeff, if you remember correctly, though, he was the one that resisted coming in anything but a safe situation.
He did at first, but he did at first, but then I think, and I'm willing to bet you that Phil Regan got to him in this regard and told him where you're needed is when it's absolutely time for a stopper. It could be the ninth, it could be the eighth. And he has worked a couple of more than one inning saves too. So it's not like he's incapable of it. I think possibly too many people told him too many things, and he listened to all of them. It happens.
Yeah, well,
I've seen it happen with a lot of relief pitchers.
You can't underrate what Phil Regan has done to that pitching staff. He is.
I remember everybody screaming blue murder because the Mets let Dave Island go and brought in Phil Regan, theoretically back from the grave, considering he's 82. But this guy still knows pitching, and more important, this guy knows people. From every indication I've seen, Phil Regan understood coming in, and he's known this for a long time, there is no one-size-fits-all for pitching at any level of baseball. No two are alike. They're not alike in repertoire. Even if you give me three pitchers who throw big curveballs, and no three of them are quite alike. Physically, he knows they're not alike. Mentally, he knows no two of them are alike. He works with them individually. He works with the pitcher as that individual pitcher. Now, he has a few things that he brings to everybody across the board, but that's not the same thing. He takes each pitcher individually, and look at what he did. He put the starting rotation back into shape. The bullpen, which is not going to win any prizes this year regardless, looks better since Regan came aboard than they looked before he came aboard.
Right. Lugo has been a godsend.
Well, once he too got straightened out, and I'm willing to bet the house that Phil Regan had a lot to do with it. Lugo has been dependable. He's one guy you do not get nervous seeing when he gets up to throw in the pen.
Right.
Regan helped settle Robert Gesellman until Gesellman got hurt. Justin Wilson has shaken off the initial shakes when he became a Met, and now he's becoming a good piece. I'd like to see what he does over a full season next year. He's got the stuff, and he's got the mentality.
Do they have the stuff to make the playoffs?
We'll find out for dead last certain over the next week and a half to 2 weeks. That's going to tell you everything you need to know about the Mets as a possible playoff team.
We'll know a lot.
I could say this, and I could say the same thing about the Phillies.
Right. Right.
And to a certain extent, the Cubs.
Harper seems to be coming around with the same type of Phil Regan tutelage as they're getting from their new hitting coach, former manager
Charlie Manuel.
Charlie Manuel, right. So it will be interested. I think the two teams are very evenly matched. The Phillies.
They're a good match, the Phillies and the Mets. They're a very good match. But as far as Harper is concerned, everybody was looking in the wrong place when it came to Harper. I'm going to tell you right now, Bryce Harper, don't look just at his batting average. That tells you nothing. The traditional batting average does not give the complete picture of a hitter. All it does is divide the safe hits by the official at-bats, and it treats every hit equally when every hit is not equal. Anyone who tells you otherwise should be fired. I'm going further than that. Anyone who tells you that all hits are equal should be fired as a baseball analyst. What you look at with Bryce Harper is how has he been hitting this year in high leverage, the highest leverage, the most clutch situations. Now, I'm going to tell you, until that night where he absolutely floored Philadelphia and the Cubs with the walk-off grand slam, Harper took a high leverage slash line this. His high leverage batting average, 322. His high leverage on base percentage, 385. His high leverage slugging, 655.
Whoa.
What was dragging Harper down was how he wasn't doing in lowest leverage situations. That's what pulled him down. When any time from the first through the ninth inning, when a situation means you need runs, he's there. Whether it's the first inning or the ninth or anything in between. If it's men on base, and he's been hitting better this year with men on base than he does when there's nobody on the bases.
Right, it's concentration.
You look at the player's whole picture. Let me give you again, and this is before the game he ended with a grand slam. When he had men on base at all, his OPS was 1.062. When he had men in scoring position, the OPS was 1.132. Second and third and two out, 1.636. The bases loaded, 1.zip.
Whoa, big difference.
That major difference. When you look at him that way, you stop caring about his 250, 260 batting average. Like I said, why should you consider seriously a number that treats all your hits equal when they're not equal?
Right.
A third grader should know that. A single is not equal to a double, is not equal to a triple, is not equal to a home run.
Right.
The most proper way to look at a hitter, I think, is to consider his total bases. That's where the hits are treated as they should be treated. His walks, his intentional walks. And why wouldn't you consider the intentional walks? Why shouldn't you get credit if the pitcher would rather you take first base than his head off? And the sacrifices. Everything he does at the plate that might have an impact on creating runs. You look at the whole picture, and then you take that and divide it into the plate appearances, the total plate appearances, because they're not giving you at-bats for sacrifices or walks or intentional walks, but why shouldn't those count as part of what you bring to the table when you go to the plate or when you're on the bases?
And then, Jeff, there are the intangibles that don't show up in any statistics. Can you get the guy over? Can you do it at the right time? How good are you in delivering productive outs? Right.
And outs,
exactly.
That means
that
anything from a guy moving one base or two, or a sacrifice fly. Or you bunt your way on, and maybe you got thrown out at first base, but it gave room for a guy on third to score.
Good point.
And
wrap us up with something that interests you in the game today.
I have a memory of Al Jackson, who passed away almost 2 weeks ago. An original Met pitcher.
Jackson from Waco, Texas, born on Christmas Day.
Smart as they came, pitched in a lot of hard luck, but there are two things I remember about him the most. Thing one is how good he was at foiling the bunt when there was a runner on second that the team wanted to move to third. Jackson himself once said that when he was on the mound, Casey Stengel would holler out to him from the dugout, "This is what I would do. I'd throw him a little slider and let him bunt it on that side, and then I'd throw his ass out at third." And never once, as a Met, did Al Jackson allow a runner to be sacrificed to third. The second thing I remember, the final weekend of the 1964 season, when it looked, thanks to the Phillies' collapse, as if there was a real chance of the National League ending up in a three-way tie for the pennant between the Phillies, the Cardinals, and the Reds. That weekend, the Phillies played the Reds. The Mets played the Cardinals. The Cardinals needed to win a game to have a pennant clinch and avoid the playoff. First game was Bob Gibson for the Cardinals against Al Jackson, and Jackson beat Gibson, a complete game.
Whoa.
That was the first time in their history that the Mets were anything like a factor in a pennant race. And arguably the biggest game of their life, because here they could play spoiler against the Cardinals, and Al Jackson beat Bob Gibson.
Nice memory. Let me give you one, okay? On this
I'm
date,
listening.
Either yesterday or today, and we're talking on a Saturday, the 1st of September. I don't remember if it was yesterday or today. Tug McGraw gets his last win as a Met. He was a surprise starter. He pitches a great game, gets the win, and it was his last game, and they traded him for John Stearns. And as much as I hated to see Tug McGraw go, Stearns was great.
Stearns was an excellent catcher.
He was a super overachiever, and that was what I call a good deal for both teams. Old-fashioned trade like that, but still, you hate to see
it worked out for both teams, but when I look at everything and take everything equally, I'd still have to say the Phillies got the better end of that deal.
No question. They won championships with Tug, at least one. So, anyway.
Yeah, they won the 1980 World Series.
Jeff, we're up against it. Thank you so much. You are in the
you're welcome.
rotation of folks that I talk to that are such mavens. I'm so proud of my lineup here at the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko. We'll be back at you soon. Thank you again, Jeff Kallman.
Thank you.
All right. Be well, my friend. The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.